Blue Rev by the band Alvvays. You've heard us talk about a couple of their singles before this album's been released. And
Oh, you've
someone's
heard it
listening
now
to
as
the
well.
album out loud. Copyright strike ready to go.
I was thinking about the right output. Sorry.
Giving away your secrets earlier.
Yeah. So track by track, that's what we do. That's how you're going to hear it. First one is the one that Liam played for us out loud. Thank you, Liam. Is the song Pharmacist. As is probably apparent from the times we've talked about this previously, this is one of my favourite songs of the year. I love this one. Since it came out, I've listened to it non-stop. Yeah, so great way to open the album for me, personally.
I completely agree. I think this is everything that I've loved about Always from album 1 and album 2, put together and delivered in the best way they've done it so far. The guitar tone's lovely. Vocals are even better. Long live shoegaze.
Dare I say what I think?
Well, that's the aim of this.
I think this is a good starter in terms of the melody. I like the way it kind of kicks in. But I just don't love it as a song, really. It reminds me, in terms of the kind of main melody and style, of something like Beaba Doobie or something. I feel like that kind of main vocal melody reminds me of that. And then it just feels like, in terms of the music, there's too many melodies going on that it just doesn't. The two don't marry up very well in my head, and I just don't particularly enjoy it. But I think it's an alright song. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing, but
Definitely not the worst thing. Definitely not the worst.
Definitely not the worst thing. I did mention Beaba Doobie there, so we can just go there to see something slightly worse.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we have Easy on Your Own, another one of the singles. I think the second single to be released. I love this song also, and I think the middle eight part of this is great. A couple of times where I feel like I've mentioned that upon listening to the album, but this one, the first one's where it hit me. Yeah, I like this one. I always seem to have the lyrics stuck in my head, so I must like it.
Yeah, I agree. I just think the start of it is great. I really like the melody, and this is going to become a common theme from my review. But I just think Molly, the lead singer, just sounds brilliant. It's definitely the best she sounded on any Always record so far, by quite some distance. And that's a common theme.
Yeah, the vocals do sound good. I'll concede to that point. This one again, I had the same issue with the kind of music, the instrumentation, the melodies, just doing too much for me. That nothing kind of sounds great in my ears, this song. But I do like the overall song arc and the melody and all the rest of it. But just to nitpick something, that's what I would say. I think it doesn't help that this isn't necessarily my style of music.
You're joking.
Well, but I can definitely see the value in this track and the first track. But yeah.
Thanks, Liam.
That's me.
Moving on to one that we haven't heard in advance. It's After the Earthquake. This one really surprised me because of the tones on the guitars. A bit more of what I mean, I've only heard a couple of the older stuff, but this sounds very much like what I'd imagined this band to sound like, or Dream Poppy, this one. And there's a chorus on guitar, so you're going to struggle to make me hate it at that point. And I really like the drastic change up in the middle eight part of this, where it becomes really soft. And then kicks back in towards the end. Yeah, definitely a standout album track for me, this.
Couldn't agree more, mate. I think the riff that drives the song is very strong. Again, I love the melody, and the overlapping vocals that came in really added another layer to the track. I do believe that it is another slapper.
It definitely perked up for me a little bit at this point. I won't say what perked up, but it perked up after the first two tracks. And yeah, I got this a bit more. I enjoyed the song quite a bit more than the first two, for sure. I definitely lost that feeling of too many melodies.
That's positive.
Yeah, that's possible.
Moving on, we've got Tom Verlaine. Or is that, would you pronounce that differently, Liam?
Villain? No, I don't know.
Villain.
Villain, yeah, I'd say Villain. Making out like
Um,
a pedant.
You are. Whatever that means. This song could have been just what was going on at the time I was listening to it. This one sort of passed me by a bit, to be honest. It's got very much that shoegaze, like My Buddy Valentine style, the guitar, the sort of wow sound that you hear. I'm not going to replicate that again. But yeah, just there was nothing in particular about it that stood out to me, unfortunately, on this one.
Yeah, I get that. I liked at the time. I liked that it was more understated, and I felt like it was kind of needed at this point in the album. But I agree, it did kind of just wash over me, and I can't remember anything about it now other than my one line of notes. But I thought it worked well at the time, apparently. But who knows?
I definitely thought it was pleasant to listen to, but it didn't really stand out to me in any way. And I think it would have been better placed probably a little bit later. I actually think it comes a bit early for such a kind of more understated song. But yeah, again, pleasant. I've kind of got nothing negative to say about it.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on, we've got Pressed, which, to your point there about the previous track being further down the list, I feel like this would have worked very well after the earthquake. The guitar tones are similar in ways, but not. It wouldn't have sounded too repetitive if they're next to each other. Although I've not really got much more to add about this track, so maybe if it was after the earthquake, it would have just got even more lost with me, because it's really not that much of a standout for me. So who knows?
The mirror has been shattered, Yanni, because I believe this is one of my favorite album tracks.
Well, don't worry. There's many mirrors.
Many mirrors. Well done.
It's coming up.
Not this one though. This one is Pressed, and I thought the guitars sounded quite Smithsy in this one.
Very Smiths.
And I just vocals just sound great. That is just they're good. They're very good. They keep me interested.
That was 100% one of my points. I don't know why I had to specify that it was 100%.
You stole it from him. I can't believe you can.
Word for word.
I straight away thought it sounded like Johnny Marr guitar, and then even the vocals in some places sounded a bit Morrissey, like the vocal lines sounded like some of the stuff, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I like it, but again, this was the first album I listened to this morning, so it's actually got probably the most attention, and this passed me by. Might as well say for most of the album, it just doesn't really stand out to me. That's probably the biggest issue. But I did enjoy this one. I like the sound of the guitars and stuff. It's not something I don't think I'd ever go back to.
Okay, moving on. The aforementioned Many Mirrors is the name of the next track. I like this, and I've just put it on the background while Liam's been muttering away, because I hate the sound of his voice. And
We all do.
reminded of, I do actually like this quite a lot. It's more of an understated one, I'd probably say, but very much something that I can imagine being released in like the 90s, which is sort of the kind of style that obviously this is trying to emulate, with the shoegazy elements and stuff, and the girl rock, which sounds really demeaning, style that they're going for, like
Girl rock.
It just, I don't know what the word, like the Beaver Doobie
Pink rock? Sparkly,
the
glittery
cardigans and shit like that. I know this doesn't sound like cardigans, but you know what I mean, that kind of like 90s girl fronted rock group.
Okay.
There's probably a better word, and I've just made it even worse by girl rock, and then you putting it out that I then said that as well. Thanks, Liam, for that. So yeah, I like Many Mirrors. I like them a lot. I'm very vain.
Yeah, I like this track as well, but this was the first point in the album where I started to realize how similar everything kind of sounds up to this point, and I kind of struggled to shake that idea afterwards, which was a bit sad. Definitely don't dislike it, but I'm just craving something different at this point. But the vocals going back into the last chorus were tip top. the melody, the delivery, just everything about it. Very good.
Many mirrors regarding your point of just getting a bit too much of it at this point. Yeah, again, I feel like I've got not much to say just because this isn't my style of music, and I don't know how to describe kind of how I feel about it, because it all just does kind of sound the same, but I don't dislike it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I really,
Makes sense.
again, I quite like this song, but like,
I mean, like,
almost there's nothing else behind that.
as much as I like shoegaze, probably not to the extent that Cal loves shoegaze, but I do very much enjoy it. It's never. I don't feel like there's ever like a massive standout moment for me in terms of the shoegaze genre. It's always like I will just like it a lot, but there's never like a I don't know, something magnificent that I can always sort of refer back to. It's just it gives me a feeling that I just is very pleasant.
Yeah, it's the tummy feeling that I always say shoegaze
Yeah.
gives.
Moving on, very online guy. This is one that we talked about last week. Was it?
A few weeks ago.
Last week. And I mentioned how weird this is. The vocals. I like this. I like how different it is. Vocally as well. Is what I mean by that. And yeah, still my thoughts sort of mirror what I said about it previously. It's an enjoyable track. I feel like it's needed at this point. It's just a weird vocal one.
Yeah, I agree. I think sonically it doesn't really differ to anything else, but obviously vocally it does. I like the premise of the track more than the result of the track. I think it's a clever idea, but it just annoys me ever so slightly, which is a shame.
I mean, this one stands out to me just as you said, because you guys have said it's different. And I like the style of it. It reminds me a bit of La Femme. Brought out an album last year or the year before, whenever the fuck that was.
We covered it.
But did we? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I definitely listened to it.
Except this isn't French, so it's slightly different to La Femme. But what was I going to say? I really like all the vocal effects on this. All the kind of like stuff. Sounds exactly like that. But even as a standout track, I still don't have a lot more to say about it.
Okay, moving on. We've got Velveteen. I feel like it's the best way of saying that.
That's because that's the correct way of saying it.
Yeah, yeah,
Spot on.
Exactly. This one, I feel like we're gonna have. Well, I can gauge pretty much what Liam's gonna say about this one already. I like this one a lot, but I appreciate it. It isn't really stand out apart from the very end with her vocals that she has, the vocal run, and then the synths which are very 80s esque. Yeah, but it's I like it, but I can appreciate it's not the most exciting one going.
This is one of my favorites from the album tracks, and I think it's because, while not being like exclusively shoegazy, it gives me that feeling that shoegaze gives me. This is incredibly emotionally driven. It's a bit like this album's "Forget About Life" from their last album. It just makes me emotional. And yeah, Molly's voice again is tip top. Every time I say it, it gets better than it was, which is impressive.
I actually really like this song. To be honest, this actually was one of the standouts of the
What?
album. I like the vibe of
not
this song. I think it's
expect
very
that.
pleasant. I think part of it is like the drums and synth remind me of like War on Drugs kind of stuff.
Okay.
And that kind of just that rhythm is good, and I don't think it does too much to kind of doesn't overdo it, doesn't really kind of try and make it anything special. It's just a pleasant song. Again, like I wouldn't say I'm ever going to go back to it or anything like that, but in terms of this album, I did very much enjoy this song.
Interesting. That really took me by surprise.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh my god. Next up we have Tile by Tile. I feel like the only thing that lets this down is the fact that it's right after Velveteen. Because I like it. I like how chilled it is, but it's sort of getting to the point now where there's a couple of songs that are a bit more like this, and this one doesn't do a lot to stand out, but I don't hate this one.
Yeah, I don't hate any of them, but I did not make a single note on this track. And I actively tried to numerous times. But every time I listened to the record, it just passed me by, which is all the notes you need.
I think that's fair. I did like this one when listening through to it, and just because it was slightly different, a bit more understated again. And I like the sounds, but again, it just doesn't do enough as a song to kind of keep me very excited.
Next up, we have Pomeranian Spinster. I didn't like this. Didn't like this one.
Me neither. Definitely the weakest on the album.
I feel like it tried to go down the more like punkier route with it in terms of what was being played, but this one really took me out of it compared to everything else. That was like a sharp bend.
Yeah, I agree. This was the first time that I've been disappointed by a track. A lot of them have kind of just been okay, but I was actively disappointed with this one. I just don't really think it did anything of note, to be honest.
I enjoyed this song.
Yeah,
which I reckon is probably quite obvious that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. For the thing is, I don't think it's like the best song in the world. I think if it was an album full of, if this was actually their style of music, it would be one of the weaker songs on the album. But because it's in this kind of like, it's a red in a sea of blues, isn't it? Sorry, Yanni, that's a bad example. But it stands out. It stands out. Is what I'm saying. It's the tallest tree. That doesn't mean it's better necessarily. It does if it's a tree. Again, that's a bad example. But you know what I'm trying to say. Kind of strokesy style, guitar sounds, which kind of liked. And I know just a bit more to it, but it doesn't go deeper than that.
Next up, this is the last single. Belinda Says. We talked about this previously. My mind has changed on this song. It's grown on me quite a bit. The bridge is good, and the key change I feel like really elevates the track and makes it stand out compared to the other songs which are of this similar style. And the vocals at the end are great. That's the first time one of the times I've said that as opposed to Callum saying that. But I thought the vocals were towards the end of this song were very, very good. So yeah, definitely a grower. This one, but like me,
all the best ones are Yanni. Yeah. In the words of Justin Timberlake, whoa.
Perfect.
I kind of checked out at this point a little bit, but I did one thing to say about this is I really enjoyed the solo at the end. Just a little solo. I really like the sound like guitar. It was very Pompoko sounding guitar. Look at me, all these references to the artists. I'm just so kind of hip and trendy.
So
that's how you listen to music.
Wow, incredible.
Moving on, Bored in Bristol. Bored listening to this track.
Bored KB.
Yeah. I like the main riff, but apart from that, it doesn't really offer much, in my opinion.
Yep. I was starting to check out at this point. So my notes for the two after this and this one don't really amount to much. It was decent, but that was about it.
Yeah. I think I mean I said before I was bored as well listening to this. I've checked out at this point completely. So like
of the review as well.
I can just say the same thing I've said for the rest of the album, which is that it sounds alright, but that's it.
Yep. Second to last, lottery noises, or lottery noises, if you don't want to be as common as what I just was. Starts off lottery. Starts off promising, but then overstays its welcome. Bit like this album.
Oh, I honestly couldn't agree more.
I definitely think, I know I didn't really say much about Bored in Bristol, but that was actually the point, I think, where I was like, this is like the end of the album. This album should have been 12 songs long. I'm at this point now where there's no need for any more after this. Not talking about the quality of the songs individually, but as a kind of full piece, that's where it should have ended.
Considering it's a 38-minute album, it feels long.
It's fucking long.
Yeah,
It feels
that's the problem with
long.
having songs that sound very similar.
Yeah. I
Um,
did like the second half of Lottery Noises, when I was kind of picked up a little bit and there's a lot more going on. But and I also think I didn't make a note of this, but this should have ended the album. But I can't remember what Four Figures like, to be honest. So
Before we move on, Liam,
okay.
can you give me your best lottery noise?
what noise does a lottery make? That was so.
It's up to interpretation. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Moving on.
So
The
hard.
final track. Come
I
on,
was
boys.
thinking of doing like the sound of balls rattling around, but
Go on then, do that. Get some balls rattling around your mouth, mate. Make that happen.
I can't do that. I don't know.
44.
He's just beatboxing at this point, isn't
Yeah.
he?
Super fast.
Final track, Fourth Figure, comes in at a whopping 1 minute 20. A nice closer, I feel like, but it's just nothing fantastic. I feel like I could have had this be the end and then just been off board in Bristol and Lottery Noises, and I feel like that would have been all right for me. But yeah, it's nothing grand, is it? It's not like a statement piece, but I feel like it does it's a nice one to close on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It does its job, but I don't know. Could have done without it, really. I suppose.
Yeah, I think that. like I
Jesus
said before-
Christ!
Sorry, there's a delay. You
There's
both
a
just account for the
delay.
delay a little bit. To me, that was a 1 second break between Callum speaking and me speaking. So,
To
if that-
me, I could have gone to the shops and back. Okay, now
He could have put water in his tea by the time you responded. Then
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, guys. I don't know what the issue is. There always is some sort of delay. It's not my fault. Like
always your
I
fault.
said before, I think Lottery Noises should have finished this album. I think Four Figure could have gone before Lottery Noises, and that might have been effective. But as the last song, like, it's nice and fine, and that's it, really.
It's nice and fine. We must now
Fine.
rate. Callum.
overall, I liked the album. There wasn't really anything I disliked. Pomeranian Spinster was as close to dislike as I got. But there was too much of the same thing, and it was too long, which caused me to lose interest. So I'm going to give it a 7, which I think is still a little bit generous. But it had potential to be
Mr.
better.
Dogberry.
I was actually going to give it. I've lowered my score slightly. I'll be honest. I have lowered it based on a number of factors. I'm going to give it a 6. Now, all right, come on. I was going to give it a 7 because, despite everything I've said, I appreciate this as a solid album. But listening back, I don't think it's quite as solid. Fucking hell, as solid as I originally thought. So I'm giving it a 6.
Okay. Well, Carl, I'm going to go with your score here, and I'm also going to give it a 7. Although it is pretty samey and does go on slightly too long, the songs that I find myself enjoying, I will be revisiting multiple times.
Yeah.
So that's been the Alvvays album review of Blue Rev. Hope you liked it.